Valentine Angwa, who was in the UK. He's back in Cameroon, and we're glad to have him on Prime R. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. Good evening, my co-panelists. Good evening, Cameroonians. Glad to be back home. Thank God for a safe trip, and what a wonderful experience.
We also are in the company of Dr. John Ako, lecturer with some universities in Cameroon. Good evening, welcome.
Yeah, Mr. Leonard, it's a pleasure again talking Cameroon, and again a very pertinent issue, not only for Cameroon but Africa. I would like to equally extend my welcome to Apostle Ambe for his Sabbatica. Hopefully that he has a nice time with some of those guys in the diaspora and many more in London. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Doc.
Dr. Micheal Dimancho is also in the house with us. He's one of the latest authors in Cameroon. He launched his book on Saturday out here in Douala, Cameroon's economic capital. He also lectures with some universities in Cameroon. Good evening, welcome.
Thanks so much, Mr. Leo, and good evening to all Cameroonians, and praying that God will continue to keep us as we are, to continue to help us to persevere, and of course, and to bless Apostle Ambe to be different from the ministers in Cameroon who have been out of the country and see what is happening. Great things are happening in the country, but they come back and they remain in the pigsty and want to continue with this piggery here in Cameroon.
Okay, we take exception to that. Cameroon is not a piggery. We may not have attained the level that we desire, but not a piggery. Now, Apostle Ambe Valentine Angwa, who is holding back our development as the continent, the African continent?
Mr. Leo, this question is very sensitive, and I think sometimes it's good to travel. When you travel, you get experience, and when you get experience, your perspective changes. I have been one person who have been hammering very hard about the colonial master. I think we should be able to know what was done, who they were, what is being done, and who they are now. A lot of Africans are judging the West. A lot of Africans are judging the colonialists from what happened, not what is happening. And I think if we are going to do a comparative analysis on what we are going to be submitting here today, we're going to be offending a lot of Africans who do not have a proper understanding of what is operating for the now. For instance, Mr. Leo, Germany, that happens to be a country that has no colony in Africa as it stands now. Number one, has 25% of Europe's population. Secondly, the gross national productivity of the European Union, Germany controls 20%, and Germany is considered, I think, the third or the fourth largest economy in the world. Germany doesn't have any colonial master in Africa. Considering, colony in Africa for now. Spain, the same. Italy, the same. Those are countries that are very, very advanced. We have Slovenia. It has a population of 2.1 million people. There is free education in Slovenia. There's free health condition in Slovenia. And Slovenians are bringing in blacks from Africa to come work in their country. They don't have any colony in Africa. And then if you look at it critically, the only country that is still interested in African affairs, which I know for now, is French, the French, to some extent, even though they are gradually leaving the continent. The British, I was in London, and I got in contact with some British parliamentarians, and they are very ashamed of their history. They don't want it to be recounted anywhere they are, that they practice slavery, colonialism, and they are far away from the African affairs. If you look at former British colonies, they have a certain dimension and level of independence. That's why elections are conducted free and fair in some of those former colonies. And if you look at it, they have their own currency, which tells you they have a certain level of freedom. A person like Museveni recently, being a former British colony, they discovered oil in Uganda, and Museveni insisted that they must build a refinery. If not, there will be no way for them to extract the oil, and it just remained like that. Now, the idea that the colonialists are the ones causing Africa to fail, I think is a myth. I'll put it that way. And it's not a reality anymore. We have a very serious problem as Africans. We have bad leadership in Africa, and we have equally bad citizens. We have been accusing just the leaders in Africa, but I have gone around to also see that if we don't have bad citizens, we will not have bad leaders, because it is the citizens that make the leaders. And if you go right from the common man in the street, the corruption we are talking about is not just a corruption of the leadership of the country. The corruption is right in the street. I circulated in London. I went to other towns in Britain and other parts in Europe. You will never see a driver drive past the traffic light when it is red. That tells you that the people themselves contribute to the stability, they contribute to the serenity, they contribute to the dignity and to the growth of the economy. No country can grow only by its leaders. It takes the collective participation of the citizens as well as the leaders to make the country grow. So I think the growth of Europe and other parts, even though they stole a lot from Africa in the past, as at now, Europeans and Americans also, the citizens contribute because they carry out their responsibilities, and because of that they advance very well. I've also gone and seen that there are blacks who are succeeding very well in Europe, like the Gatwick Airport in London in England is owned by a Nigerian, Adebayo, and the Central Airport is equally owned by him. He owns two airports. We saw House of Commons members who are blacks, House of Lords members who are blacks. They participate actively in the European Parliament and other activities in politics. That tells you there's a level of liberal operation, but you cannot find a black man in the Russian Parliament, neither will you find a black man in the Chinese Parliament. So I think our African leaders who have gone there have gone and learned so many good things, but did not bring them back here. For instance, we don't pay school fees for children in school in London. I don't know if our leaders when they did not copy that. You don't pay hospital bills. Sunak, the Prime Minister of London, once drove in the street without a seatbelt in his car. He was arrested and he paid the due fine. That is to let you understand that there is a level of serenity and collaboration. They have set up a system that makes everybody respect and obey the law. So it tells you that when we keep saying that the colonial master, we are just endorsing the bad behavior, bad leadership of our leaders in Africa, as well as the poor behavior of the citizens. So I disagree with the fact that the colonial master is still responsible for the mishaps and misfortunes in Africa this day.
Okay, Dr. Akko John Akko, I don't know whether you buy what he just said. Should we still be holding the colonial masters for the level of development in which Africa actually finds itself?
Yeah, somewhere you will not, we cannot detach ourselves from our colonial history. Many Africans today know that the greatest part of Africans, in fact, we can talk of the slavery, dated back to the period of slavery. Many quality human resources were transferred to Europe. And today those people are being stationed in many parts in Europe and America. That equally helps in the labor or the human resource development of those nations. And that notwithstanding, the question we should ask ourselves again is, were only African countries alone colonized at the time in the world? And if we look back, the question will be answered zero. A lot of countries in Africa equally gain independence before even some of those nations that are more prosperous today.
For example, in Asia.
Yes, in the Asian continent, I want to talk example, a small country like Singapore. Singapore gained its independence in 1963, when more than half African countries have gained independence. I'm talking of the giant of Africa, like Nigeria, and maybe Cameroon inclusive, and Ghana, and many others. But then, if we have to look at the same 1963, a country like Burundi, Sierra Leone, you can imagine, and I believe Somalia equally gained independence the same year. Are these two nations speaking the same language? They were equally colonized by the same British. Here we are talking of Hong Kong, that was under British rule, which equally gained independence before, after 1960, which many other African countries gained. What is the level of Hong Kong and what is the level of Cameroon? When you get again more further, many Africans even argue that the issue of having larger families, that there is so much population in Africa that Africans cannot cope. And you ask yourself, which country in Africa is as populous as China? Which country in Africa is as populous as India? If you have one, then there is an indication that Africans have been putting their minds where they are not supposed to even lay claims. And it has gotten out to a level where sometimes we look at the West in Africa as an enemy and we get into a confrontational atmosphere. I'm talking of the present system, the way people call revolutions by military coups. And a lot of Africans have applauded military coups. And when I sat back, I said, you brought this topic today. I thought of something 2 or 3 days ago. I asked if the military situation and rule in Mali has given Malians more peace. A lot have not even known that more Malians are dying now than they even died when French were present. A lot. Disorder is not in Burkina Faso that we are talking than even when the French were there. And the guesswork.
The situation in Guinea where people have gone for 8 months without salary.
Then now we are talking of Niger. We knew the level of Niger at the time with the French, and we knew that Niger is one of the poorest in Africa. And now Niger is happily that more than 1,500 soldiers of French are living by the end of the year. And we asked, what are you counting on? When we know we have Al-Shabaab, we have Boko Haram, and many other terrorist organizations around the zone. To them, all that was being sponsored, which comes back to my opinion that the problem killing a lot of Africans, which we need to do, is doing self-evaluation, auto-evaluation of our mindset. If really Africans are up to this level to mandate themselves. When I ask myself, on the level of population, like Apostle Ambe was saying here before, when you look at China, the population management approach of Chinese, that if you have a child, the government take care. Now they have gone to the second child, that if you have the second child, the government will still take care. On that social security covered by the state. And in many other countries around the world, governments have taken charge of the labor of children and the burden of children. In Africa, how many are at that level? Our own mindset, which is called the monster, many have said, or at level the monster killing Africa is corruption. Where we build strong families and strong political leaders rather than building stronger institutions. I want to take example. He quoted Yoweri Museveni in Uganda. I remember there was one Idi Amin Dada that took over from Milton Obote, and Obote again was driven by Yoweri Museveni, which promised Ugandans a better future for those people, and that he will never run for re-election. This is Yoweri Museveni, and that is Uganda. There's over 40 years, close to 40 years now. Ask the same person, what has he changed in the life of his people? He has changed the culture several times. Yes, we are not going far. People will say, why talk out and not your own country? This is Cameroon in which we are ruling in. That in 1972, President Amadou Ahidjo launched Operation Green Revolution, Feed the Nation. And I'm telling you sincerely, everybody here confirmed those that were born in 1980, that a cup of Gary was less than 10 francs. 10 francs. Yes, we used to buy 11 cups of Gary for 100. And another person, that individual ruled just for 22 years. Another has taken power for 40 years now. People are unable to eat. And so we should blame France, blame Germany, and Europe. He quoted the example of Germany. I'm talking of the Netherlands. How many territories do they own in Africa? And Africans kept on wallowing and confronting foreign businessmen who could even help them instead and do the right thing. We are talking of projects in Africa, infrastructural development. Look at where money borrowed goes to. We have built Ambe. It is at 100 or 200 billion francs CFA, when the same infrastructure has been carried out in other parts like Morocco at less than half that amount. And we got on every day, we got on our bed. It's like France is a problem. And so we are going to the Mediterranean. Why are we there in the Mediterranean? Imagine what happened in Lampedusa just last week. European Union is coming to give money to Tunisia to manage African migration. I mean, the same Europe will accuse them for evil and killing. It's coming to give African money to manage rural or inter-urban or whatsoever exodus. And we still sit back and think the problem, they are the ones causing the problem. We are looking at what just happened Cameroon, Chad-Cameroon pipeline. We went on and others realized that the contract that was signed to transform ExxonMobil to a new company was masterminded by few people within the government of Cameroon that use SNH as just an image. This is the mindset of Africans. What belongs to all becomes ours. What of what we call national identity? Do we talk about national identity in Africa? Many talk of ethnicity and tribalism. Look at a lot of government composition. If you're not from a particular ethnic group, you will not rule. But I'm telling you that whenever I see Americans, just the parts of an American flag, you see the spirit that flow in them. There is that we'll call national identity. We preach more of ethnicity. When you go to politics, this is the level of politicians. They use it to gain few political points and win office. And when they win the same office, what do? They come back and select the same people in the same government. How can you use the same people to have different results? It is not going. So somewhere, politically, tribalism, ethnicity, bad governance have been a killer disease to Africa than the colonialism Africans are clamoring now. I'm afraid for those countries that have just been taken over by coup d'etats and thinking that maybe the Russians and Chinese are better options. Act well. I have seen a case where a Chinese having children with an African, you don't benefit anything again. Just imagine that a Chinese girl put to bed with an African, no social benefit if they live in China. But if that same woman had that child but with a Chinese, the government of China takes care of. I know of my brothers and sisters in the United States and other parts in Europe benefiting the same once they have the identity as a national. The moment you get married to an American, you become an American. And so children born in America, forget about marriage. Any child born in the United States become an American citizen and benefits the same. So when we look at this mentality, there is a problem that Africa need to do away with the mindset. The mindset is the problem, and that mindset, which we had in the past, is doing us no good.
Dr. Dimancho, where is this mindset coming from? Why have we why are we still holding on to this notion that our woos are coming from the West? And going by his, I don't know whether it is him or you who said that we could cite England that had territories, France, but the other ones that are succeeding, like Norway,
Netherlands,
Germany,
how are they succeeding? Because the impression is that they are succeeding with
African resources.
Ukraine colonized?
No, they are not there. You talk of Czechoslovakia and the rest, they own nothing there. Slovenia.
Doctor.
Mr. Kum, thanks so much. I just want to say first that we should understand that it is not the benevolence of the Europeans that brought them to Africa. No way. They came here because they had an interest. That is the first thing I have to say. The second thing I would say is that sometimes it is wrong to compare Africa with India and China and all those. Africa that has is a lot tribal, multi-ethnic, and whatsoever language that impede development, because in economy you realize that a country or a territory with so many ethnic groups, with so many languages, with multi tribes, it's very difficult to implement policies in that kind of a territory. Very, very difficult. We have to take this fact. And therefore, when we keep on comparing Africa with other, maybe with China, with India, sometimes it doesn't hold grass or doesn't hold water. This is one of the things that I want to say. Now, I will let you know that Europe has never left Africa, even though we say what has kept holding Africa down after colonialism. Has the colonialism actually finished? Because, as I said, Europe didn't come for didn't make a benevolent trip to Africa. They came for an interest, and that interest is holding Africa down till today. This is one of the things that we have to accept. Starting from slavery, going down to colonialism, and now to neo-colonialism, that is holding Africa down. I want to quote Wataroni, who has actually, in his economic development, said that Europe is still holding Africa down today. And we are going to look at a lot of perspective. I want to first of all look at Europe that has kept Africa down. And he quotes, "The wealth created by African labor and from African resources was grabbed by capitalist countries of Europe. And in the second place, restrictions were placed upon African capacity to make maximum use of economic potential, which is what development is all about." Voilà. This is what I want to make as a point. Africa is coming from a very, very difficult past. It is interesting for people to know that in 2023, Africa is even poorer. Let me take example of Cameroon. Cameroon is poorer than it was in 1972. Why? Because there are people, and I want to say Europe and other partners in Asia, talk about Russia, talk about China and all of those, who have perpetually kept Africa down in order, because it was a mission. and the mission is not yet finished. And therefore, when we keep on blaming, even though we Africans, we have the blame, and we're going to come to that, because I'm talking about external hand that is keeping Africa down. We are going to come to the internal hand, because we ourselves, we are a cause to what is happening. But I want to say that colonialism, starting from slavery to colonialism and neo-colonialism, has kept African down. Colonialism is that, that habit that ripped Africa of most of those things that Africa had, especially when we talk about agro-industry. Dr. Ako talked about the Green Revolution, which Africa failed to take an advantage of. At a time when agriculture was supposed to be developed, Africa spent its own time maybe solving intertribal problems. Meanwhile, other countries like Japan, they were developing. These are some of the things that we have to take as reality. Africa owes huge amount of debt that has stopped it from developing. We cannot refute this fact. You see, Europe has kept Africa down, that Africa cannot develop with its resources because it keeps on day in and day out paying debt to Europe. And it's a fact. How would you develop if you keep spend all this time paying debt to your colonial master? So colonialism, has not helped Africa in any way to develop in terms of partnership and in terms of trade. Yeah. Because when you look at since the colonial period, the amount of trade, Africa has not been able to trade reasonable with other countries. Why? Because they were fragilized. The economy was fragilized. The debts are high up, and there is no way of getting out of this very soon. How do you expect a country like Africa to develop when all of these things are happening? When people are still,
not a country.
Yeah, it's a continent. Yes, that is true. It's a continent, and we have to accept the fact that it has its own realities, which has hindered it from developing. Because when you keep on blaming Africa that other countries were not colonized.
Let me cue. How did Magufuli do, and how is Kagame doing? And when you look at South Africa, when you look at South Africa, I don't know whether you know what is happening in Mauritius and Botswana. And how are they doing?
Sometimes when we are talking about examples, when we are talking about a situation, sometimes it's not going to be sweeping, because in every spoiled granite, you owe, every good granite you have, owe some grains that either you threw away, or in good ones, or in bad ones, there are ones that you can collect. We know that some of these countries, they have developed out of their pelicanish nature, that the leaders have come up and decided. But in Africa, we have some countries in Africa that you see with that kind of a gene that people copy from previous generation, that it would take a very long time, just as America took, and it's about 20 years independence today, to be able. We are not supporting what is happening. We are giving an analysis and a realistic view of what is happening. Yes, there are some African countries who are doing well, but doing well up to which level? Even when you talk about Magufuli, Magufuli too has his own faults. And when you talk about Tanzania today, do you think Tanzania is the El Dorado? Tanzania is not even the second or the third economy in Africa. It is not. So we look at isolated things and we quote, just as Europe too has its own issues, America too has its own issues. And I think that what we are to be doing here is, rather than just completely blame that Africa has done that, we need to be able to see what happened. And we are seeing that a lot of the issues happen. Africa is suffering. You look at the World Bank and the Bretton Woods Institute, World Bank, IMF. You see what they have been doing. When they started their structural program, what did they say? You will have to privatize some of these national companies. And what did they do? They privatized the national companies. Yeah. And what is happening today? There has been bad faith because there is a very IMF and all of the European that's coming back now and setting its own company at the detriment of the local companies.
Yeah, but doctor, we have the African Development Bank. Why should we be rushing to the IMF when we have our banks here in Africa?
That is the question maybe that we should be asking, that it is an issue that is African based that we have to look into, because already when we must have identified where the problem is, the African Development Bank, yes, just like any other institution, like even the African Union and all of those are institutions that are not functional to all other African countries, and we should be asking our question. Ask your question why some presidents do not go to African Union summit. Those are issues that we should face. Ask why there's this loophole in the African Development Bank and giving loans in some of the countries.
In finances, there's something which is peculiar. And I want Doctor, we should let the audience know. Because when you talk of a debt is money everybody borrow with the intention to pay. And most often you don't borrow a debt or you don't borrow money to use it in organizing meetings or safari trips or maybe for leisure. Like we see with a lot of our leaders here, you can understand that the problem is not the debt we have taken, it's the usage of the debt. The mismanagement of state fund. What investment?
The IMF is there to watch over the usage.
Even if they are watching, please, after usage, when money has been disbursed to a country, how you use it is not IMF again. Even when they come in for their propaganda machines, the reporting mechanisms of NGOs and human rights.
And me that they are the ones who are even causing
what's happening. They are not. Let me tell you. Yes. That is why we said here that the African citizens are a problem to themselves. When you go to Singapore, Axwell, they took loans. China has taken a lot of loans. There is no country. The most indebted country on earth is the United States of America. Are you aware?
Yes. So, I know that.
Yes.
I know that.
So,
nobody can impose on the United States. One thing you don't know is that nobody imposes on the United States of America regarding his debt. That's one point you should be clear about.
Doctor, I want us to take an example. Forget about Bretton Woods debts. Look at interest rates within local banks in Africa. Have you ever sat in your room to check how much Africans pay as interest within the local banks of their own borders? Forget about international. I mean, have you ever checked about that? Have you checked the interest rate in Europe? I mean, within the Europeans, and what we do to our banks internally that discourages trade and development. How can an individual pay about 20 or 22% on a loan? The United States, I believe, presently they are about 1.5 or 2.5, homologated by the state, and that's how it goes. And you are paying 22% on the loan you have borrowed for investment. How do you intend the economy to develop? There are some things that, I tell you, when we are talking here, we should be very sincere to ourselves. When you take a loan, and the loan is used for real infrastructure in which it was intended, judiciously used, you can never complain of it, because those infrastructure will generate the same source for the payment of the loan.
We saw how the COVID funds were managed.
Yeah, I don't know
whether the funders were supposed to come and tell you how to use it. Should you really be monitored when you are given a loan?
Yes, the IMF monitors.
Yeah, but
they do.
Why do you want?
It's an opinion.
If you are given loan to tar a road, do you need to be reminded to use it well?
Use a road.
Mr. Leo, we are trying to narrow this entire subject matter to loans.
No,
yes, you just a topic. Since we're talking finance,
you are trying to narrow.
Yeah, but the question, I just want you to come in. But the question I had for you is: let's look at development-wise Africa, and he raised the issue of neo-colonialism. Why is it working for Africa and not in other parts of the world that were equally
complaining?
Yes.
Talking about first and foremost about the activity of neo-colonialism. Why is it working more in Africa than any other part of the world? It has to do with leadership. When these guys came with Millennium Goal, privatization, structural adjustment program, it was not only in Africa. They took it to India. They took it to Pakistan. They took it to Mongolia. They took it to Asia and other parts. Africans have a problem in managing things. Most of the presidents that came to power, they were like new girls who were introduced into sex. And when a girl is introduced into sex, without knowing how to control herself, she becomes pregnant. And any woman that gets pregnant at that stage becomes very wise to the issue of sex. That's how our presidents were. When they came to power, they were introduced to Millennium Goals, structural adjustment programs, privatization, and they embraced it without knowing that these things have no benefit to their economy. Most of them have stayed in power and realized that all these things they have applied so far has not benefited the economy. Now most of them are trying to come back to their senses. And that's the reason why you see most of them are holding strong to power, not because they want to stay in power. They want to correct the errors they could not correct in the early days of their leadership. This is what the trouble is right now. Now, because these guys know very well that the older presidents are becoming wiser and intelligent on how to manage their structural adjustment program, privatization, and Millennium Goals, they are trying to raise young politicians who will come in and equally continue from where these other persons failed. That's the reason why you see most of the African presidents are holding tight to power, because they have realized that all these things you were introduced in the beginning, like privatization, Millennium Goal, structural adjustment program, have all failed. Now, coming back to the African man, let's not jump go to the north to the south. There is cyber insecurity. Let's work in Cameroon here. Do you know how much money disappears in your phone per month from MTN and Orange transfer? Out of the money that they cut as taxes, from 10 francs, 25 francs, that disappears. If 25 francs goes out of 1 million Cameroonians transfer, that's 25 million. What are the checks and the balances put in place for all this money that is being trafficked in the account of individuals? Our systems alone in the first place do not even help the citizens themselves. There is internal thievery in the systems of Africa that you cannot call the Europeans to come out. You are telling us that the Europeans are coming to take our resources in Africa. I want to ask a question. If somebody has 100,000 and they steal 70, if the person is smart enough to manage 30, that 30,000 will make him right back to 100,000. The Europeans are not carrying out every income in this Africa away. I am telling you that I have traveled to Europe and I'm telling you what I have experienced there. Most of those guys are not even happy with what happened in the past. And they don't want it to be mentioned anywhere because it's a disgrace to their personality to have brought Christianity, claiming to serve God, yet they practice something different. It's a shame. If you ask a British man, they have apologized openly. If you ask the British man or ask some Europeans why they did what they did, they regret it. Now, coming back to what Dr. Akojo was saying, Dr. Ako was saying that I think Dr. Micheal has he's trying to hold on to something that probably he went in discussion somewhere. The problem we have right now is that the management of resources in Africa, the management is damaged by Africans. Let's be sincere. We are talking about military coup in the West. This is not the military coup started. We have seen military coup in Nigeria. We have seen that Niger you are talking about had the first military coup in 1974. The next military coup came in 1996. The third came in 1999. The fourth came in 2010. This is the fifth military coup. It is not the Messiah military coup. Ibrahim Barema in Asara in 1999 took power in Niger as a colonel. It amounted to nothing. Mamadou Tam, there was equally a coup that brought him in power. It brought to nothing. So don't tell me that it is the Messiah who has come now that will bring the solution we are looking for. We are talking as if coup started in Africa by today. It did not start in Africa today.
Jesus fell 3 times.
Coups have been there. So the conception that coups are going to bring us that deliverance that we have been waiting for too long is a dream of lasting peace. Resources management in Africa is the most serious problem. That's what we have here. Can you imagine? I was in London and they declared Birmingham bankrupt. And they said the management of the council of Birmingham was supposed to be brought in the House of Commons for scrutiny. Who has ever brought a minister, a mayor, or any parliamentarian before the House of Parliament for scrutiny on how resources are managed? That bankruptcy they are talking, I mean, the people are living very well, but according to their standard, they say Birmingham is declared bankrupt. That is Britain's second largest city is declared bankrupt. Who bankrupted it? They say the House of Commons called the management of the Council of Birmingham to come and give an accountability of how. Those people are not richer than us, they are accountable. They are not richer than us, they are good managers.
Transparent.
They are not richer than us, they are transparent. They are not richer than us, they are able to sustain their economy because everybody puts in the little effort they have to make the economy work. I have seen that it is not just responsibility of leaders to make the economy grow. The citizens themselves have a very pivotal role to play. But yeah, we are corrupted from leaders to citizens. We have preached corruption against leaders for too long. But I've realized that even the citizens are corrupt because all those corrupt leaders came to power by the contribution of corrupt citizens. And if this is not treated, let us dance to the left, to the right, to the north, to the south. We pay costs here. You don't pay internal costs in Europe. We pay XMS messages there. They don't pay it there. We pay school fees here. They don't pay school fees there. We pay hospital bill here. They don't pay hospital bill here. Where do they get that money? That causes them not to pay internal costs, not to pay school fees, not to pay
the system.
The way the system is set, management is there. How do you explain that? You enter into a train with a card. If you don't pay £2.7 the penalty is £80. Who is punishing who here for stealing the money that somebody creates 216 ghost workers that they are collecting salaries every month? Try that nonsense in Europe. They will sue you one that is even in your bloodline that has not been born. But who is taking precaution over all those things? So if you calculate the amount of money stolen by us Africans and what our leaders mismanaged so far, if they put that money in place, it will do better than what is doing in Europe.
Yep, that's the impression I had also. I think if we were to put our resources into use, but let's look at our originality. Some of us say that we are proud of who we are, but Africans actually proud of who they are. going by the way we patronize these goods and services, because we feel better drinking champagne from Bordeaux, using furniture from Italy.
From Italy, yeah, shoes.
Is that not actually where the problem is? Because we want to be told or imposed on what to do.
Yeah, he made mention of the citizenry character, which most often is controlled by the state. And a lot of people doesn't know. It gets back to the culture. For me to promote my culture, yes, when you go to fashion, let's get in the domain of fashion, clothing and design. In China, when they organize fashion and design, they tell you Chinese fabrics, how they have been sold. When fashion and design modeling is done in Japan, they want to see how the old fashion of Japan has been transformed into ultra-modern fashion. When they do the same in India, that is why you find our women looking for Indian wraps. In Africa, I just want, for an example, when I watched the African Cameroon Cup finals, something pricks my mind. I realized there was one person in the photo that was sent in the group, Chief Tabetando of Mamfi, Bachontai, who came out in his traditional regalia. The rest were in suits. Just imagine that. You are in the installation of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I saw the outgoing president and the president coming in, all dressed in local regalia. Who promotes the order? We are coming into feeding food. What we eat. A lot of Africans will be happy that they were at LFC or they were at McDonald's, and so they took hamburger or sandwich.
KFC.
People are happy that at midday they took a cup of ice cream and maybe 2 biscuits, and you ask if that particular part is of Africa. Then somewhere you realize some telling you that the last shirt, the shirt he wore last wedding, was coming from California when he visited. Bushi. He'll be telling you that it's Christian Doyle. These names, L and G or whatsoever. Yes. One of the things, Leo, which is funny for us to know here well, Africans will give you statistics of trade between China and Africa. Come Africa and Russia, Africa and America, Africa and Europe. I have never seen where Africans are giving statistics of trade within themselves. Within themselves. We are happy to say the trade flow now has moved. I mean, in the last summit that just ended, the Russo-African summit, people were happy that in the recent time, there have been an increase in trade between Africa and Russia. Nobody is interested to know whether trade between Africa has increased in the same line. Africans, Europeans, Americans, 51 states, you move from north to southeast, no barriers. Just move to Guinea. You have a problem. Guineans threaten Cameroonians to build a block, a border. When we knew that there is what they call the CEMAC or the European African Union.
There is a campaign now in Gabon where Gabonese are saying
continental free trade
area, which has been signed.
Gabonese are actually out there that Cameroonians should leave Gabon.
Yes, it has been before. It just went down before. Now with the military coup, you come back again. We have been carried and dropped here in QC and Kribi on small boats that we should go back. And this Africa that we are building, Africa we want to movement of capital is what we don't know again. Do you know it will cost you a lot to transfer money within Africa than when you do the same transfer with European partners? Are we aware that interbank transfer costs a lot within Africa than you do with Europe?
Yes.
Just imagine that. Okay, it becomes very simple that this particular group of persons don't even know what they like. I was memorizing that when I was growing up, a TV set, when you were for those who were honored to have TV set in 1980, 1985, for you to own a TV set, we knew that no, you were the the she of the quarter. Good, of the quarter. But what has taken us that the prices of those things have dropped drastically after maybe 40 years. While within ourselves, a bag of cement that was 1,200, Mr. Leo, has instead gone up more than 500 times. And then a sheet of zinc that was at 1,200, now we're buying at 7,500, and nobody questions. What causes that? A DVD which we were looking upon as one of the greatest cinemas for those who own. At the time, was sold at 350,000 for you to own. Today, with 15,000, you have a DVD in your cupboard. So, what has happened then to the African economy? And when we go on it, like I'm saying, what happened? I asked an economist how a bag of rice may cost in Thailand. The guy said a bag of local rice in Thailand, a Cameroonian buys it at 8,500.
8,050 kilograms.
Yes, 8,000. 85. And by the time it gets to the boutique, at the man selling at the shop, that bag of rice has been transformed to 21,500. For the man at the boutique to sell to a local consumer, he needs to add at least 2,500 or 3,000 for his profit, owing for costs that he entails keeping and managing it. So a bag of rice that reasonably those who are selling dairy products will not do it with less than 25,000, 28,000. And so what has happened? He said the cost of transportation. Most often those companies will buy at 8,000. He guarantees you transport to your port. They have billions of tons to buy. They guarantee the transportation of that very rice to your port in your country. What happened? You are to take care of what? Taxes at the port. The douanement, what we call here. How do you pay the tax and the rest? Meaning 8,500 from Thailand to 21,500 when it gets to a shop. What has happened? They will tell you fuel costs, transportation costs, which is not even there, but in your country of origin. So taxes alone have weighed close to 13,000 francs on the same bag of rice. And you ask, where does all this money? That's the question we ask. All this money, where does it go to? That is what you saw early in the morning in Alibongos in Gabon. The sun had more than 8 bags of money, cash. This is Gabonese money.
You will see the same.
And tell me if you have once witnessed that somewhere with Joe Biden's son or whosoever in that same state. When we talk of responsibility, transparency, accountability in governance, such things will never happen. First, there are limits. Everybody has an electronic. It's a smart economy.
Yes.
Electronic system. There's an amount of money you don't move. Never.
Yes.
With it. Everything you buy to your account. And so they monitor who, where, and when you spend the money and on what. So, us getting to what we are proud, yes, Mr. Leo, we are proud of who we are, I believe, will be more applicable when a Cameroonian meet with a Nigerian, and not when we talk with other civilizations. Okay. Because Africans, for now, we have a lot to do to be proud in front of other civilizations or dine on the same table of nations we call civilized.
Yeah, Dr. Dimancho, can we also say that there is a problem of cultural identity in Africa that also plays negatively to the level of development in which we find ourselves compared to what we have India. What we have in India, you see the guys have remained true to their culture. China has remained true to, but Africa, almost everybody wants to be civilized. We are running away from our originality and ending up being culturally mulattoes.
Yeah, of course. I think that talking about people wanting to run away from their own culture is normal. You know, there's what we call osmosis, where the stronger solution pulls the weaker one. When you sit here and look over there, you find the Acadian life in which people are living. You want to get over there.
Why is the truth. Why is it so strong for Africa and not for other continents?
Well, I think Africa has remained perpetually backward for reasons that we are trying to enumerate here. I talked about internal issues that have made Africa to remain backward.
You're talking about external issues.
Yes, I was talking about external, but now let's be looking at why Africa is remaining backward. First of all, you want to look at the issues of conflict that has made Africa to remain down. You see, presidents who come up to power, starting from independence up to now, when they come and they make these conflicts, due to the inter-ethnic differences that people have, what do? They focus more on consolidating their power. I mean, in that very moment where they think that their power is at risk, because, don't mind you, Africans have the desire for power. They are power hungry, and secondly, Africans are misers, those who just want to look at money and they are happy. That is one of the things. Even not for the sake of it, Dr. Ako made mention of somebody keeping a heap of money in the house. That money is not, let me tell you, that money is not for any use. It's just because they are misers. They put the thing there, watching at it, and they are just happy. They are just happy. This is one of the things that we'll have to look at. Now, secondly, we talk about the international trade that we're talking about, how goods are even much more expensive here, and even clearing at the port is expensive. We are forgetting one thing, the issue of the weaknesses that we have in our currency, which is also causing one of these things. You find that some of these are brothers who go to Europe. Within a month, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are already building, putting on mansions here. It is because over there they have a strong currency that when they send back here, I mean, are you oblivious to that in Africa we have very weak currency, and that when you have $1,000 in the United States of America, you send to Cameroon. How much does that make in France CFA? I don't think that we have to ignore this point. We don't have to be oblivious to some of these, eye-opening all these issues that are causing us, are putting us down constantly. We have to be very, very careful. So I think our economy, our agro-economy, we have not valued it. And somebody said on the platform that we like to be eating hamburgers. Instead of somebody getting on the morning and eating fufu corn, or eating your corn, bio, what we call actually bio, coming from the farm, because we want to identify with the stronger or the more enlightened or more civilized person. And the question is, why do you want to identify with that person? Is the blame on actually the citizens of Africa, or there is something that caused it? And I started by giving that external factors that caused what has caused. But I'm saying that it is a process, and it's a gradual process. Nobody supports Africa for the fact that we have government officers who are conniving, and maybe they exploit the resources of Africa for nothing. You find a big community operator, he sees an administrative staff or the government, they connive, they exploit minerals for nothing. They don't pay taxes. There are many economic exploiters in Africa who don't pay taxes. You only suffices for you to belong to a particular party, and there you have clearance, and you are able to do your businesses without any fear or favor. So I think that these are some of the things that we have to get into. It is not as if we are a cursed nation. I want to think that in Europe and America, there was once a period of this nature. But the only thing is that we who talk about it, we should be able to give that a good example and give hope that something may happen. We have had a lot of, the green revolution that we talked about. Now, this was the time that Africans were supposed to catch up, and we say that there will be a great to export agro-economy and then industrial economy too. But we have left it in the hands of few people, whereby you find very few people, for example in Cameroon, they want to export and they want to import. Once you want to produce, and export yourself, you are hindered. Once you want to import what they are importing, they hinder. So you have a little group of few people in a clique who are working and pushing down other people from actually excelling. These are the things that we have to condemn. Given to the presidents of, the leaders of the nations. They are leaders of the nations who come and serve their families. They do not serve the nation. These are facts that we are not oblivious to. The corruption is very, very rife. Favoritism is very, very high, because we have tapped from that issue of social communalism that we have, whereby you think that what you have, you should share with your family, or you share with your immediate friends and whatsoever. This is what is happening. But we have misconstrued the issue of sharing. Now, they brought capitalism to us, and we welcome as if it was something we were going to go by. But before we discovered, we saw that we were not able to go into the market, because capitalism is about the market. We saw that we cannot do the market because we are even more confused in the whole issue, whereby we do not know where we started, we do not know where we are, we don't know where we are going to. Because in the world, in development, we talk about developing countries, because every nation in the world is developing. We don't have a developed nation. We have nations that are developing. And therefore, we feel that Africa should also start developing like other nations are developing. Because Europe, where it is today, they are still advancing. The world is changing. And the world is changing because of the aspiration of the youth, the zeal of the youth, the zest of the youth. They are looking ahead. And that is what Africans are missing out on. You find that Africa is a patriarchal continent, whereby, the men are stronger, and they don't see anything good in women, they don't see anything good in the youth. These are some of the things we must decry, and that the youth of Africa must be given a future. And why are they not given a future? They are not given a future because these octogenarians, They feel uncomfortable when youths are coming over with new energy. And that's why in most of African nations, you find that they even refuse the issue of dual nationality. Because they know that when you bring that technology from out, when you bring that knowledge, that advanced knowledge from out, you want to compete with them. And where they are seated, they just want to sit and eat. Africans are people who like to sit in offices. They want to bring in NGOs and sit in big offices. They don't want to do anything. This is what is happening. But I think that in talking about it, in trying to, arouse, conscientize the youth, we are able to go above this. Europe was sometime here. They are about 200 years independent. America is more getting to 300. I think Africa, the strides will be high. We are 60 years independent. Let us hope that all of these things, because our eyes are open, because we are here where we are today, because maybe in the year 1980s, 1975, 1990, there were no youth who were talking like us. Television is not very long. That came to Cameroon for 1985. And I think that is somewhere that many people started being conscientized. Things are going to happen. And before long, with many youths coming up, I think that we are going to get there.
Yes. Can we also say that our cultural, our holding to our culture and tradition has also worked adversely to our development?
Mr. Leo, on the opposite.
Okay, it has.
The abandonment of our culture and tradition has worked negatively against us.
Okay.
When I was done presenting my speech in the House of Commons in the UK, the Qatari ambassador walked up to me. He said, "An excellent presentation you did there." He said, "But you see, Africa's problem is not anybody." He said, "We have denied carrying our culture to the global stage."
Okay.
He said, "You cannot copy the technology of somebody and expect the person to buy it. They will not buy it." That was what the Qatari ambassador said to me. He said, "The uniqueness of your culture is what distinguishes you." And I met it in India, in England. The Prime Minister of England is an Indian, very strong practicing Hindu. The wife is a Hindu. He did not marry a British woman. He married a wealthy Hindu woman. The mayor of London is a Muslim, Pakistani, practicing Muslim. His religion did not change. His culture did not change. If you look at an Indian in Britain, you will know it's an Indian. You can't see a Cameroonian in Britain and know it's a Cameroonian. Their attire has changed. Their tongue has changed. The hairstyle has changed. You will need to investigate to find out if somebody is a Cameroonian or not. But from a look, you know who is an Indian. Just look, you know who is a Muslim. I was taken to Kafrat Square. I saw some people from Saudi Arabia and from Dubai. I was told that they fly their vehicles inside the aircraft to come and drive inside London. In other words, we are bringing the vehicles from our land. We will not drive British vehicles. But a Cameroonian who has stayed in Britain for 10 years, if you hear their accent, you will need to fast and pray and consult the deities of Nso and Bafut to find out if this person is from Cameroon or not. It tells you that we sell our culture. Indians are the richest people in England. Most of the houses are owned by the Indians. They come and live in a particular building, only them, work money among themselves, buy a house for this one, before you realize almost all the houses they are bought.
Exactly what I was told in Canada.
That is exactly how they are. They are the strongest in the IT, and they control the IT sector. I was in that conference and they said to me, there's a fight over America and China over Taiwan. And I said, what is special about Taiwan? They said Taiwan produces the best microchips in the world that controls almost all electronics. That's the reason why there is a fight. Yes, that's the reason why there is a fight over Taiwan with America and China. You see, that uniqueness is what makes Taiwan distinguished in the world. As advanced as America is, it depends on them. You go to Iran. Iran is one country that is a Muslim country distinguished in producing drones in the world. The most outstanding world drones on earth, Russia cannot produce, America cannot produce, China cannot produce. That uniqueness. When I was in London, I was invited in a program. This guy they call Witty Minstrel. He came there. We are proud of who we are. He came there, and you look at him. He was dressed in our Togo traditional regalia. But the Cameroonians that came to attend that program, 90% of us that were there, where they wore suit or skinny dresses. and we are talking with our nostrils, and we are coming to welcome somebody that came to display our culture and say we are proud of who we are. Culture plays a very important role in the development and abandonment of any people. So I think the dissipation of our culture on the global stage has affected also the growth of Africa, because this African culture is unique in its time, and I think the whites admire what is unique, what they are not used to. If we begin to do what they are doing, then we cannot sell to them. That's exactly what the Qatari ambassador sat me
because
aside.
We are bringing a photocopy of what
you cannot be born an original, you die a photocopy. We are trying to bring a photocopy of what they already have. Let us introduce what we have to them, that it will distinguish us. Coming to the place of dishes, I was taken to a restaurant to eat. An African restaurant, mixed. I saw an African wearing suit demanding a foreign dish. I asked for kati, I asked for achu, they gave me achu. If I cannot carry my own traditional meal out of the country, what do I sell there? We fail to understand that our regalia and what we eat also contribute to the growth of the economy. But you discover that almost everything that we are having here is almost being swallowed by what is coming from outside. You hear people pride themselves eating in the Chinese restaurant, but the Chinese doesn't pride themselves eating in the Bamenda restaurant.
Never tell you that.
I took my girlfriend to a Chinese restaurant. That's the pride. What insolence? This is what the trouble is. So I think the how do I put it, the neglect of our culture has also played a very pivotal role in hampering the growth and the economy of Africa. And these are the things that other countries of the world have sold. You go, I saw a Turkish restaurant. I saw an Emirates restaurant. I saw Lebanese restaurant. You see, people are carrying their restaurants to other nations while we are going there to go and eat in those restaurants. Somebody said, I took my girlfriend to a Lebanese restaurant in Accra. I took my sweetheart to a Chinese restaurant. I wanted to show her that I'm a man. You show a woman that you are a man by eating the Chinese restaurant?
Because of the price.
Because of the price. So you see, that's why we have another serious problem. I think we have to orientate our people, like Dr. Ndimacho said, which is very correct. The advent of the television also has helped to reshape the minds of Africans, because we were like in a kind of cocoon and then kept in total ignorance. But the coming of television, the social media has helped to send a lot of important information out. I was in London watching the African films. I opened Netflix. I watched The Fisherman Diary. I watched The Gloat. I watched Nigerian films. But you see, the Cameroon will tell that, I'm not used to order nothing the way man they know the story for the Taiwan campaign. That's our own culture. We sell it through the movie. You go there, Petit Pays was coming there. The weekend was coming, Petit Pays was coming there. They had advertised it for almost about a month. And then somebody told me that if Jay-Z come here, Jay-Z will have more crowd than Petit Pays. Why? The people who are attending the Jay-Z's program are Cameroonians. That is exactly when you understand how these things operate. You understand that we have a problem with our orientation. We need to go back and school Africans to start consuming African products, consuming African culture, consuming African music, consuming. That will help also boost the economy. There are people in Nigeria who have sung only in Yoruba. I mean, not other language. And they sold CDs within the Yoruba community that made them prosper. Somebody has sung only in Igbo. I have seen movies produced purely in Igbo. The movies made marks in the world, even Yoruba. But you see, you cannot produce a movie here in Bali and sell.
Even the Bali people will not buy.
They won't buy.
Yes. Okay. Let's look at ourselves as far as embezzlement, corruption is concerned. Isn't that also enough source of underdevelopment for the African nations? Look at what is happening across Africa. We have heard of so many disturbing stories in Nigeria, in Cameroon, and other nations.
Yeah, remember at my very first outing, I said corruption has been labeled in Africa a monster. A monster, which means that we don't even know how to go out of it. Yes, when we mentioned, like I used the example of Uganda, imagine somebody like Diami of Uganda later fled the country to live seriously in Saudi Arabia. That is where he's sure to have had and amassed a lot of his wealth. Yes, I want to use the example of Sani Abacha, that until after his death, Nigeria came to realize that Sani Abacha has amassed a lot of billions of naira to UK banks. And this is the fight the Nigerian government is doing every year. These governments are still unable to send back the money. I want to use the example of a small country like Dubai. Dubai
United
Arab Emirates, yeah. Which I said here, the country or nation Dubai came up in 1975. They had little or nothing. I don't want us to get into some type of things, because Nigeria was supposed to be heaven in Africa. Because even the guys, the top of the Qatarians, the Dubai guys have been saying Africans are wicked to themselves. There is no wickedness they refer to than corruption. So within it, we come to example, I was talking of the President of the United States of America. Were you informed that Barack Obama stayed for 8 years in Washington without a building of his own? And that when he left the White House, he took rentage for the children to complete school in Washington before he goes back to his village in Atlanta. And in Africa, it's not possible. You cannot even happen that the president is working. We have sons and daughters. I want to use the example of Congo. The father is the president and the son is the vice president. We're going to Equatorial Guinea. The father is the president and the son is the vice president. We come to Cameroon. I don't want to get into detail. We don't even know where the children of the president are working, but they are in flight every day, and they live in many parts of the world. In other countries where corruption has been managed, the president has a salary. We are capable of evaluating how much he was paid, how much he has used for expenses of children's schooling, and how much he has used for charity. Because in part of other government, it's a must that every citizen carry out that part we call charity. Now, how much should be left in his bank account? Like he said here, when people manage an economy as if they manage a family issue, we are talking of digitalization. Remember, Cameroon government has sung this word of a numerical economy. And Mr. Liu, ask yourself, what has been so difficult to digitalize our economy? That a birth certificate, if you get a birth certificate, you should pay through your mobile money, and then they ask you just the next day to pick it. How has it been so difficult that to pay a land title, you should pay it and then they simply call you to come and pick it over? But when we know, like we're talking here, management of funds in Cameroon, are we doing it because we like it or because we think it is detrimental? When they came out with the biometric, the new passport version, Mr. Leo, what is happening? Cameroonians now are having the passport in 48 hours, 2 days, 3 days, all that. Why can't we go in the same smart manner in managing money paid to ministers, even when it concerns public contracts? How many people have gotten into it to know that we started here? Yes, Olembe, we were shocked. The other company left, another one came. But before the company left, there was a suggestion that they need more money, meaning the first expenses were exhausted. And the other company were told, ask for 24 billion to be added, let them complete the job. We got into a new contract with a new company, and more than 44 billion was instead given to complete the same task. So somewhere, corruption will be difficult for us, but it is not impossible, which somewhere will tell us that there is that aspect of greed within Africans. Now coming back to the question we're trying to answer with the issue of debts. The moment we put a transparent economy, an economy where people are accountable, an economy where there is information, because as I'm here, America will tell you, going online, you know how much the President of the United States earns as salary. I don't know whether Cameroonians are aware of what the ministers and the President earns as salary. We always keep guessing here, and they'll tell you, member of parliament, this is how it is. So it gives an idea that if we move from this personalized issue, remember the struggle at the Cameroon National Assembly a few days ago, the Northwesterners, members of parliament, telling you that a lot of lucrative positions are no longer for Anglophones, and that everybody has taken everything, the marginalization process, which comes to counsel the idea of national identity. We now work on tribal lines, even when institutions are for the government, where we build strong people, and those strong men, like he said, you find the same people, those who took coups in Nigeria in 1985, were the same Obasanjo who became president later. Yes. That we grew up in 1987, and I heard of the director of Sonel, Nyadji Fenji. Today, he's the president of the Senate. And does it mean that such an economy does not evolve? How do you want corruption not to be institutionalized when the same human being chopped from the same pot throughout for centuries? That the same broom is what we are using to sweep the same office. If we don't replace that chair, no problem, because it's still his office. Imagine replacing a minister that has made 22 years in the same position. He has a mandate even more than that of the President of the Republic. How do you want that ministry to change? Their budgets they bring in and they manage among themselves. We have seen people who are in prison for operational PV because like now we are coming very soon, they are going to close the budget for 2023. When Supreme State control passed through your ministry, we realized that there was 21 billion still, or 6 billion still unused. The control passed in November. By December, they are coming to ask. Money has been consumed already. And they asked that now missions were handled, conferences have been organized, and so that's how the money, and the same people who are asking to are on the same payroll. And so that 6 billion has been used. It's somewhere we need to be honest. Corruption, people say it's impossible or it's difficult, but I said it is not impossible.
Okay.
And if we need to do it, corruption not only consumes us. I'm telling you, the burden we are talking here, yes, I admire somebody like William Ruto of Kenya when he came out brutally against loans from IMF. But now, what happened with Chinese and Russian? They will tell you that the internal affairs of nations belong to nations. It's not their concern. Whether you use the money well, if you don't use it, it is not their concern. So corruption will continue in Africa if we don't have the strong citizen movement, the talk of NGOs, civil societies, and all the right. Because if within members of government, it will be very difficult for them to evaluate themselves. Africans in their lifestyle don't have the word stealing. Stealing has different meanings when it comes to management. They will tell you embezzlement. And you know that embezzlement does not exist anywhere in African dialects. And so once you take one which is not yours, it is theft. And such a person must be punished accordingly. In China, please take them. Chinese are very brutal with this. If you touch 2,000 of government coffers, it's a firing squad. But when we go with humanization of what human rights, that people are not, now we were accepted to reduce or remove death sentence, we find ourselves here. What does it serve Cameroonians? That we gave the means to steal and we are unable to control before stealing. We want to control after stealing. Article 66 of the Cameroonian Constitution talks of declaration of assets, which all of us can manage. It is not because President Barack Obama has become the President of the United States that his children will leave the government school for St. Bede's or a Lady of Lords. Before doing so, you should be capable of justifying that within your salary. These are the things we are talking. So if your expenses, I told people every time, even when we cry of the maneuvers going on at the port and the tax authorities or whosoever, it is easy to investigate and handle it if the institutions were stronger.
Okay, let's look at this divisive factor that is ongoing in Africa. We have seen so many nationals rejecting other African nationals living within their territory. We've seen other presidents that are very hostile to citizens from different nations within Africa. Is that not also an impediment to that development strides that we want to see Africa achieve?
Yes, it is, Mr. Liu, and I was telling you that we have welcomed something that we didn't know how to go about it, how to use it, and how to actually put it as a priority for the development of Africa. And what am I talking about? The issue of capitalism, because capitalism is all for me and none for you. In Africa, we are God-fearing people. We are people who are generous. We are not selfish in Africa. And therefore, to find an African, sending another African out of here, it's like sending him out of your home. We grew up in a village whereby even late at night we welcome strangers, and it was not a problem, and it was our pride. And I think that generally a village on Colonial is a microcosm of an African village. And to hear that there are some Africans in some countries driving away other Africans is just to show you that people, we have adopted a culture and adopted it wrongly and adopted it for a selfish purpose. I mean, but I think that we need to get on with strike. Like, Doctor, let me come back to the issue. Dr. Ako, we're talking about corruption. Corruption is everywhere. But I would like to say that there is, everything has a starting point. Everything has a developmental point. Everything has an end. And Africa is a very, very young continent in terms of development and in terms of the youth, because now when you look at it, you find that the majority of the population in Africa is the youth. The youth is more, I mean, they make up the upper majority in Africa. And coming to this enlightenment, coming to this knowledge, there are a lot of things that African youth, if we're taught, we are going to be able to bring up Africa in terms of development sooner than later. I want to give an example. Like every era has its own issues that we raise and we condemn or we praise. There is the book that I launched where I was talking about African culture made barren by the early missionaries. When you look at Africa today, most youth don't work. Africans are hard working people, but they have turned to become imbeciles. They have turned to become lazy. Why? Because there is a particular doctrine now that is brought by the churches which says, amen, like someone will say, you are blessed. And when you say amen, what happens? You feel that you have taken the blessings. And you think it is like, that amen creates fear in the youth. In such a way, if you don't say amen, it means that what you think that you are supposed to have is going to be taken away from you. That is actually what I want to deconstruct. And this is what is killing Africans. Why should some youth in some country, or why some leaders, now you also see now that leaders in Africa are at cross purposes. They are not working together. Why should some leaders encourage, that kind of xenophobic attacks on other Africans living in that particular country, if we are talking about an African culture? Because we used to make reference of an African culture, because we know that we have certain values. And when we are talking about it, we are making in contrast to Christianity. We make the difference between Christianity and spirituality. African spirituality. These are some of the things that we all need to draw a line on. We are in a period whereby we find people who have come to Africa with the issue of, a culture. And one of the things that is embodied in that culture is what? It is that Christianity. Whereby people know that Christianity is spiritual, is something that is spiritual. Because it is spiritual, they cannot control. What do? They have not given names to it. And what names do they give? People talk about the Catholic Church. People talk about Presbyterian Church. People talk about this because they want to use these names and these religions in order to control the minds of people. And this is what is happening in Africa. You find most of these people who are even driving people out of their individual homes and country are Christians. You say, you do not belong to my faith. You do not belong to my church. You do not belong to my this. Therefore, you are not part of me. These are things that have been inculcated. These are things that have been imported into Africa. And those are the things that I think that we, the youth of Africa today, are watching at this thing. And I say it's a period. And that because there is this reawakening, there is this knowledge, there is this discovery of the tricks that they have played on us. I started by saying that we cannot only blame Africa, because sometimes when you are helpless, when you are drowning, you can hang on a snake. And we are not oblivious to the fact that some of these things have been pushed onto our truth because of our helplessness. Africa is a green continent, and that we grew. We know that we are growing, even in terms of agriculture. If we come together, we are going to grow. These are some of the things that we have to. But to grow, we need to be able to stand tall as African youth to stop conflicts. These conflicts, getting to Gabon, I should get into Gabon freely. Having to say something in Gabon, I should say freely. Having to travel, I should travel freely. Having to use currency, I should use it freely within Africans. Now, if we do not agree in some of these things, who do we think is coming to make us or push us to be able to get these things? So I think that all of these things about xenophobic attacks, people refusing their own brothers, and rather accepting, because mind you, it's not only that, it is easier for somebody in France to get a visa to come to Cameroon than for me to get a visa to Senegal, which is wrong. It is not supposed to be so. So we have to be able to decry some of these things and say that all of these things because of money. We are getting into the economy, we are going to capital, we are going into the market, and we think that since it is about me and me alone, it is about all for me and none for the other people, instead of the adage of, instead of saying live and let's live, or instead of the fact that man is man because of man, or instead of the fact of Ubuntu, where you are because I am, Man, we have gone out of this calling, and you know, and you feel that okay, you cannot more identify with your own brother. Now, identifying with your own brother means that you are debasing yourself, means that you are putting yourself low, and therefore you have to identify only with somebody who has a different color than you. I don't think that Africa needs to deconstruct the issue of color. Is it really color? Is it color because they are different? It is not really because they are different. They are all human beings, and if we accept that they will sometimes the way we are, then we have to start growing our economy to the desired end. We have to get into our agro industry. We have to get into industrialization. We have to get into developing our route so that a minister who is sick, I mean, in Cameroon, shouldn't go to Switzerland to get medical care if our medical facilities are good. So that when we want to give contracts, like in Africa, you don't get people from abroad to come here and give the contract. And now you see why I was talking about the issue of the expatriate, whereby you give you aid, and then they condition you with that aid. Like we have the issue of the Buri Bridge, where it was by the French, and then it was the French, only the French DJs were supposed to work on. So you have that, you giving things, and then the strings are tied into what you are giving.
Yeah, but what use do we make of the resources that are generated from within the nation? Let's talk about what comes from our coffers in Cameroon. How judicious do we make use of?
Coffers.
Because if we have to blame that loans are given to us and conditions imposed on us on how to use them, how judicious do we use the resources?
Mr. Liu, I started by saying that in conflict-torn areas, zones, territories, it is very difficult to implement economic policies. In countries or in territories whereby you have any group, multi-tribal groups or any groups, it is very difficult to implement economic policies. And where are we going to get out from here? Now, what we are now saying that we have understood our realities. This is our reality. In Cameroon, for example, we have about 247 different ethnic groups, and we have to accept that. We see that even when it happens to elections, where people do not vote because they are voting ideologies, manifestos. People are voting because they are voting a friend or a brother from the friend religion. Okay. So what we are saying is that we have come to the realization of all of these things, and we have seen how bad our economy has fallen. We have seen how poor we have gone. We have seen that we have not grown. Since 1972, our economy in 2023 is even poorer than what was 1972, and therefore we have to improve.
Without cultural and traditional values, people become fools and cannot think normally, and everything will fail. You cannot compare with others that you don't know. Lack of wisdom because of absence of cultural and traditional values, no way. The power and value of our currency is very low compared to that of the West. Rate of parity is like night and day. Good evening to you. In the studio, I like the choice of words used and comparison made between Africa and Europe, that European authorities are transparent, not corrupt, brings the authorities to scrutiny. I think if we Africans start working in this light and also being accountable to the citizens, spiced with an enabling environment, I tell you, within 5 years, Africa will outmatch Europe. May George is writing from whom? Apostle Ambe, Valentine, and Goa. We're talking about development. Development has to do with wealth creation, and you can only create wealth when you work. Let's talk about the work culture amongst our youths and the capacity to create and to take a risk, and the work culture in our public service. How much time, how much service do we render to be able to imagine that we're supposed to be rich?
Mr. Liu, I think what makes work effective is the policies attached to work, not work itself.
Okay.
The policies we attach to work influence the kind of work we offer to our communities. For instance, the pay packages, they influence the way workers work. The disciplines attached to work equally, they play a very pivotal role. And also, the system put in place also influences the development and growth of the economy. For instance, Mr. Liu, a lot of money passes through the hands of individuals in our economies, and that's the reason why there is high rate of embezzlement. But if you go out there, you will discover that money does not circulate in the hands of people. For instance, I entered buses, I entered trains. There was no time I gave a dime to the bus driver or to the train driver. Money was placed in a cart you pay with your card, it lands somewhere, and that central bureau controls all the income. But here, you look at recently, because we removed passport in the hands of police officers and we are paying the money online, they became very, very, very ferocious. If you go to do the passport now, the police officer there will do everything possible to squeeze money out of your hand, because we no longer pay money again into their hands. And secondly, they don't have the opportunity to squeeze finances out of people's hands. If you look at critically, when we transport ourselves, we pay transport fare in bus and train stations. The money enters into the hand of individuals. Individuals can easily embezzle money. But you see, there are places where all these workers have no access to money. Money is driven towards a particular direction, so you cannot steal. Look, for instance, now they have decided that you are going to have e-visa. E-visa is something you apply online, you pay directly as you pay passport. All those who were in charge at the Interpost bringing it e-visas in Cameroon no longer have access to money again in their hand. So they will punish you for bringing somebody out of the country by making everything frustrated. This is because we have an analog system of government where money is in the hand of people. In those days when we go to do passport in Yaoundé, we will see sometimes 500 persons we gather, and they are paying 50,000, 55,000. By the time they gather all that money from where it was collected, for it to reach where it's supposed to go, it does not arrive at the same amount again. People have touched it along the line. That's what promotes theft in the country. But if you go to the advanced nations, you will realize that they have set up a system where money does not circulate in the hand. I entered buses in England and I never talked to the driver even once. I entered trains, I never spoke to the driver even once. That tells you that there is a dimension of structure put in place that does not even give access to money, give money to in the hands of people. So that's the reason why I think that a lot of stealing, embezzlement, frustration in our economy, because we allow so much money go through the hands of individuals. Somebody is in a ministry, all income being paid passes through and goes to the bank. Ministers are not supposed to touch money. Directors are supposed to touch money. People are not supposed to touch money. Cards are supposed to be put in place where when money is directed, it goes to a central unit, and that central unit has a record. You cannot steal from there. When money is taken from that angle and properly put into the system, it causes all this weight we are carrying left and right. It reduces it. And that's the reason we may think like some poor have so much money. No, a me and Dr. Nimacho are giving 2 million today. I may appear to be a rich man while he appears to be a poor man. It has to do with the management. So it tells us that the structure put in place is very, very poor. How do you explain that you are going to pay bail? You are paying a commissioner's hand in a police station. You expect that money to reach where? You are going to buy ticket, stamp, same fiscal stamp. Somebody is sitting there and is the one collecting the money, 1,000 francs, and you think that money will leave his office and go and reach where it's going successfully? No. And that's the reason why you see it's almost a bit difficult to actually control corruption in our system, because the structures put in place, the financial policies and the procedures put in place exposes finances in the hands of a lot of people you cannot explain. People who are not trustworthy. Yes, but not trustworthy. I have to be sincere, Europe is no richer 1/10 of African riches. But you see the little they have set it up in such a way. You hardly hear that somebody embezzled 50 million, embezzled 30 million.
They are not misers.
Why?
There's even no possibility for him to even see.
There is no possibility. There is no possibility. So I was asking myself, are we living in two different planets or what? Are these guys have their own brain in front and ours behind, or theirs behind, ours in front? What is happening here? You go to CMPS to go and pay CMPS, it is somebody's collecting money. You go to where they are buying fiscal stamp, somebody collects money. An individual, you go to Kamwata, you give receipt to somebody's hand. Yes. You go to Sunday, you give money to somebody's hand. They are collecting it. By the time they collect 50 million, for a riches where it is going, it is 35 million. It's a l'argent est perdu entre Paris et Washington. Like in 1994, we collected money for in the air. For the very first time, someone disappeared in the air, as if we have not entered aircraft. L'argent est perdu entre Paris et Washington. It is the pilot that knows where the plane is in the air. How come a passenger is telling us where the plane was in between the air?
Yeah, but the work culture, it is true that a lot of money is stolen, but if you don't put in enough time in working, how do you create the work? For example, we know that our persons who go to work at 8 o'clock, by 9-10, almost everybody is in bars.
Mr. That's why I mentioned that the policies are
when everybody
to work.
is enjoying and drinking, and how do we create the work?
The policies attached to the work. If somebody is earning a befitting salary and he knows that if he jokes with it, he's sacked tomorrow, they won't joke with it. For instance, the least paid common worker in London per hour is £10. That's 8,000. and you work 10 hours a day, that's 80,000. Will you joke?
Can't play with
You won't joke. By the time 4 weeks are rounding up, you are at 2,000 pounds. That's about 1.6 million francs CFA. Who will not work? I mean, first school, that's the lowest rate. Who will not work? And then if you don't work, the sanctions put in place are very delicate. How do you explain that you miss paying a bus for £2.7 and the penalty is £80?
You have to pay.
The penalty behind that little crime is so dangerous you will not even want to commit that crime. But there are no penalties attached here. Somebody sits at the red light, the traffic light, it is red, he drives past, nothing. Try it. You will see a letter at your door telling that you are owing the government £75. So you go and check, there's no money, but the little money that is there satisfies almost everyone. And from what I gathered there, British people don't work. The people are working in London are Chinese, Indians, Pakistani, Nigerians, Cameroonians, and Ghanaians. But the British live on benefits.
Yeah,
I begin to ask as if they have some much money. It's management.
Okay, Esther writing from Kumba says, hello, Mr. Leo, good evening, and to you all in the studio. Your program is fantastic. I love it. Thank you. Esther, yeah.
Yes, I was just saying, we are talking of a working culture. Imagine we are talking of the teachers' strike. We're talking of OTS, that the teachers said they have over-supported. And somebody is telling you that teachers should be patient. And you imagine they have been patient from last year to this year. When the working conditions are not attractive, like he just mentioned here. Labor is always motivated when labor is well paid. And that is why you see a lot of Cameroonians will look for a multinational company to work with. Because these guys, while in Cameroon, you will not imagine that they still pay better than our own local company working within the same domain. And so in such areas, what happens? When you are late just for 5 minutes, you receive a warning. Now in areas or companies where we know that, first of all, how much do they pay? Yes, the law might have provided a date for payment, but the company will take 2 weeks to pay. Others even have arrears of unpaid salaries. How do you expect to sanction such a worker? Within the character of working, we work when the conditions permit workers to equally solve family problems. When you are taught in a course like labor law, we are told that salaries should be capable of taking care of the person and the dependents of the person. In Africa, to be honest, a lot of salaries have not, first of all, even taken of the person's work. Somebody has a master's degree, he's working somewhere for 80,000 or 100,000. Another one is married, he's doing security job for 45,000, 60,000. He has children. Is that a pay? Simply, you realize that the people are enduring instead of making a life. How can such a person be working and say he's working? Most often than not, we realize that a lot of Africans, since they grew up in environments where corruption is of higher level, they will ask you that, am I the one to change the country? You find people like that the country was made like that. Work with it as you met it. So if everybody is stealing, you should equally steal. If everybody is cheating, you should also cheat. But when you work with a multinational company, you will never do none of those things.
Of course.
Because even like he was talking, when you work with people like Rodiogas, when you work with, how can I call it, Brasseries du Cameroon, MTN Cameroon, how do you have access to their finances?
You cannot.
How are you even going to touch the money? Instead, time management is very rigorous. They talk of hours of work. They don't pay for hours at work. You are told people don't visit your office within certain hours. And when you have a visitor, he's at the waiting room. That's where you meet your visitor. And the cameras everywhere are looking.
Dr. Ako,
you don't have more than 10 minutes
Ako,
in that environment.
A police officer in Cameroon can collect money for ID card and go and pay for you. How?
So those are the things we're talking.
End of 30 minutes.
So in such environment, some people even think that they who even want the money are not awarded, like to the extent of those who don't even work the money.
Yes.
There is intimidation and the spirit of laziness when you see that your master that does not work anything earns more and lives luxuriously than you who works on daily basis. He is mentioning that in UK that the least paid is £10.
Yes, per hour.
Yes, within the European Union, and I believe many others, like I talk of the American banks, you have $12 an hour, and people again can go as far as $25 an hour. Just imagine that being at work for 8 hours, and you look at what you have. Your salary has been tied and skimmed to that level, and that's how it goes. If you don't come to work, they don't ask you. A percentage of that is deducted, and the sanction, maybe by suspension, is already given to you.
They will even cut £20.
So just imagine, while the sanction is hard, imagine missing a job for a day and a salary for a week.
It's serious.
And you start seeing you already have a burden of cost of expenditure waiting for you. And then look at the payment period. In places like UK, some people go as far as weekly, meaning as a week ends, they throw money in your account. And then in Africa, imagine the treatment of pay. There are people who wait for 1 month, other goes to 40 days, some 45 days, some is 50 days. Because when the month has ended and they are paying you of the 15th of the other month, Mr. Dio, it is discouraging to labor. I said labor is highly motivated when labor is well paid.
Yes.
And that is why you see those guys are conscious.
Okay. I want us to look at our development strides with respect to economic partnership and business amongst African nations. Do we see ourselves engaging more in trade and doing business within ourselves as Africans, that is developing market routes to Congo, Sudan, to facilitate trade within our continent, or we are more interested in engaging with Russia? We see Russian African Summit, China African Summit, US African Summit, France African Summit, when we have giants in Africa.
Yeah, I think that this is coming. As I said, we need to be very, very patient with Africa. Okay. A lot of things are happening in Africa now that it was like a dream. The other day, we're riding from Douala to Yaoundé, and there are these automatic toll gates. These are things that we used to watch on television, we used to hear about. I mean, I just want to give an example, just a common example that any other Cameroonian can be able to find out. Just to let you know that Africa, you know, they are coming from a very, very lazy past. When I say lazy past, I mean that when Africans got up in the morning, the first thing they did was that before going to the farm, they sit and eat their food well, and the sun shines before somebody takes his cutlass or take you and you're going to the farm. If you are a child in the family, your mother doesn't give you food, you rush to your uncle gives you food. In Europe, that doesn't happen. So I think that we need to be patient with Africa. We have a lot of African youth who are coming with a lot of ideas now. People writing projects, doing a lot of innovations. I want to recommend, or also give a pat on the back on a person like Dr. Richard. I followed Dr. Richard past 1 month. Day after day, Richard Munang, who is a assistant development director in Africa for the environment. And what he does is, I asked him one moment I asked which time does he rest, because I see him on the field almost every day, and I told him that, well, it is only when you're working for people who are conscious of the fact that if you don't do this, this is going to happen, or they are going to send you out from work. Because he's just so incredible, and they work tirelessly. Now look at here in Africa or in Cameroon, for example. I get up, if I'm working within my company, what I do is I get up at 9 o'clock. When I get up at 9 o'clock, I sit in my house, I take my breakfast, I get up to work. Nobody asks me a question. Now, you see, we have come to this economy whereby you don't ask for permission because your father is sick or because you are bereaved. They don't know that. In capitalism, they don't know that. But in Africa, we know that if you are even working with somebody and your father dies, you beg for permission and run and go for the burial. Nobody knows that in capitalism. So I think that we are coming to that period where we have youth, like I just quoted Dr. Richard and many others. There's a guy who invented the iPad and also some of those things in Cameroon, and in Africa as a whole. There's another guy who invented a solar system car in Africa. So a lot of things are happening in Africa that we are coming out from our period of grace, our period of laziness, where we thought we could just sit, get up in the morning, eat our food in the morning, and then decide to go to the farm or decide to go to work or not to go to work. So the issue of work is that is rule governed and that is disciplined is now we are inculcating that habit, and I think that is going to change. A lot of things are going to change. A lot of things are happening. Autoroutes, Douala Yaoundé. I want to give an example that I know so well. It is coming up, and very soon many people don't even know to what extent they have gone. I know it is slow, but it is going to come. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know the amount of money that's spent on that. But we are talking about what is going to happen in the next, even in 50 years. Don't put much money. Even in 50 years, it is going to be a renovation. It is going to be something new to us. So I think that we should believe in the African youth. As I said, the world is changing because of the zest, of the zeal, of the desire of the youth to change, to get to another level, to get into the another technical level. And that is why we changed from Yahoo Messenger, we went to Facebook, we are now WhatsApp, and you are on Instagram now about Ambe. Now you can sit even and preach on social media, you preach to people. The world is changing and Cameroon will not stay behind. So we are looking at a period in time, let me just say maybe in 2035, I'm not talking about emergence. I'm just talking about Africa, the UN, the African Union even talks about 2065. So I'm talking about that period whereby we are going to be able to, you take a car from here and you drive right down to Senegal, and maybe you turn over and go over there to, Africa is supposed to grow, it's supposed to emerge. So we are not going to remain, one of the things that doesn't remain static is change, and therefore we believe that we are going to have this change. We have had a lot of people traveling now and sharing experiences like Apostle Ambe. I love your experience, and many more people will share that experience. When you share that experience, you don't know what you are causing. You are causing that kind of desire in people to be able to belong, and to belong. If you don't want to go there, what do you want to do? You want to invest here, and therefore the youth would cause their government to give them that enabling environment to be able to assist them, to support them, to sponsor them, to be able to do those things that we think that are better off over there.
Okay, we want to send special greetings to Madame B. Rose, who works with Rainbow Cooperative out there in Bamenda, Northwest Regional Capital, and to you, Sabina Ikoli, who works with GTHS in Boya. We also are moving towards the end of the program, but let's look at how much business we do amongst ourselves.
Yes.
As Africans.
Yes, Mr. Liu, you know, it was signed at the AU Charter that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which came up, and it was a means of making transaction easy from one nation to another. That is making a borderless Africa. A borderless Africa, an African without borders. But to be sincere, even at the level of the blocks, the borders are not borderless. The borders are not borderless. In CEMAC, borders are not borderless. We have a common passport, but once you land at the Liomba International Airport in Gabon, you are supposed to pay a visa fee of 50,000 before you enter. That's not a borderless place. If you carry food from here to Gabon through Bitam, you will pay. If you pass through Kiosi, you are going to Equatorial Guinea, you are blocked. The problem is this: we have signed a lot of things that have not been enacted. That's where the trouble is. The circulation of things from one place to another in the continent Africa is a mirage. If you go to West Africa, there are things that cannot cross from Benin to enter Nigeria. There are protocols kept. Things from Benin to Togo, there are protocols kept. These are all countries with very cheap rates in importing materials. Goods, gold, jewelries come through Togo, they come through Benin, but to transport those things back to other parts of Africa is a serious challenge. So this Africa Continental Free Trade Area, to me, is just spoken about, but it is not enacted. Recently, before Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta came out of power, he said that people who are traveling from Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, in the eastern part of Africa should enter into Kenya just with their ID cards. They don't need a passport, they don't need a visa to penetrate. I think at the level of the EAC, East African Community, which is a combination of several countries in the eastern part of Africa, there's a certain level of circulation within that part. In West Africa, I think within the ECOWAS zone, there is some level of circulation. The CEMAC is not there, and because of that, it affects us a lot. We cannot know what Kenya produces to consume here. Instead, we are consuming what came from Russia. We don't know what Uganda produces to consume here. Uganda does not know what Cameroon produces to consume there. And if we don't come to this place of circulating goods from one region to another amongst ourselves, it's a serious problem. Cameroonians export beans to Congo, Brazzaville. They buy beans from the north, Maraga, Rwangaundere. They carry it through trucks to go to Congo, Brazzaville. But at the border there, they still have problems. They have problems at the border because there is no circulation of free goods from one place to another. I think these things, we just write them, we speak about them, but they are not enacted. And I think we can do better trade amongst ourselves, because I don't see how we are buying grains from Russia, buying grains from Ukraine, while there are countries in Africa that can produce huge quantity of those grains for that income to circulate around here. As a matter of fact, most of the things we buy out of the country, if we actually have a free trade area, countries can supply those same things from one country to another. There is no need importing grain from Ukraine and China when Cameroon can produce that grain here of wheat, another country can produce. We just open the border of the transport. Secondly, construction of roads. We saw the Trans-African route that left from Bamenda to Manfe right down to Enugu. Those are the kind of roads supposed to be constructed within the continent Africa that interconnect the continent. If you go to Europe, a clear example, you will discover that from Belgium to France is a drive. You live from Britain to France, it's a drive. You live from Slovenia to Czech Republic, it's a drive. You live from Germany, it's a drive, either through a train or through a bus or through your private car. Those borders are open. And when you are using euro in Germany, you are using euro in France, you are using euro. In Holland, you are using euro. Not that you leave Cameroon before you cross to Nigeria, you have naira. You leave Cameroon, naira. You want to go to Togo, you have France CFA. You leave from Cameroon, you want to go to Uganda, you have shillings. You leave from there, you want to go to Egypt, you have pounds. You from here, you want to go to Quebec, you have escudo. And then the currencies are just navigating and changing from one place to another. That is not there. There is free circulation. Somebody can buy. One of the things I've learned in Belgium does not have natural resources. Belgium does not have anything. The only thing that Belgium has is a port. Most of Europe exports their vehicles through the port of Belgium. That tells you that they are empowering Belgium through that source of income. So it's like they have distinguished almost every country in Europe, finding their strength and supporting their strength to make their economies very strong. A country like Croatia does not have anything. Croatia has the seaport. They are good, but in the shipping, the shipping area. And European countries are supporting that area also. So you realize that every country has a uniqueness, and they are exploiting those uniqueness. Go to Europe, you will discover that you can take train from Austria to Germany, you can take train from Latvia to this area. That is a free circulation. Nobody asks you one document or this other. The only place that you will need a visa from Europe to the next place is from Britain, because they break out from the European Union. But you don't need a visa from Germany to Holland, from Holland to Austria, from Austria to Slovenia, from Slovenia to Poland. You don't need. They circulate. So you see that if there is something we want to buy from England, from Poland, you just take your vehicle, you cross over, you buy it, and then there is no duty. But yeah, before you will cross something from Nigeria to here is duty. Can you imagine that somebody goes to Lagos, buys a car at a cock, he has to pay duty to enter Cameroon? Why, if you buy something from Slovenia, you are going to Belgium, there is no duty. All those kind of things causes trade not to circulate. So there are people who have goods stock in places they cannot circulate, because transportation and is one of the fundamental requirements in the circulation of goods and services from one region to another. And that is the reason why you see we are so much punctured, because these policies are easily enacted in Europe and America, but you don't find them enacted here. America has 51 states. You don't buy from Washington and you want to go to Las Vegas, you pay. The distance from Los Angeles to Washington, this is about 6 hours. But from here to Nigeria is 2 hours in an aircraft. But you have to pay duty from Nigeria to here. Cameroonians live here, go and buy cars in Nigeria, in Lagos, drive it on road, reach at the cock. You will give you one tax that will paralyze you. Somebody buys a car in Congo and is crossing here in Cameroon, they give you another tax. How can things circulate? It punctures the activities of goods and services and also frustrates business and businessmen. But that's not the case in Europe. The worst of it is the currency. Worst of it is the currency.
Okay, it's the currency. Now, what should be the way out of the current impasse? How do we leapfrog from where we are today to catch up with where others are?
Yeah, if we are coming from what Apostle Ambe just mentioned, that yes, the African Free Trade Zone should not be ambitious. People should pass from speeches to actions. And that which means that we need to have a free trade zone, real, which is visions. If there was what we call the Trans-African Highway, the intention was that there should be no inconveniences in moving goods from one part of Africa to another. And you imagine just about 2 months ago, Cameroon truck drivers were on strike, those that walk between the Douala-Bangui corridor, of how many checkpoints and torments or treatment they go through only to carry one truck from Douala to Bangui, when we know that we are the one that guarantees Central Africa the source, since it's a landlocked country.
Yes.
So within such landlocked nations in Africa, there is a need for free circulation. Now, when we get into an aspect like that of governance, good governance should be preached at a very early stage. In fact, it will be funny that you get to some university or academic campuses, you don't find slogans that encourages good governance. And some don't even have slogans of the future. And which means that the nation should be looked at one which is centered for the future. What is the future of the nation? Good governance, transparency, accountability, the rule of law. Institutions should learn to perform a duty, not the duty of individuals. So when you want a nation to grow and that somebody cannot be taken to court, or that the person who is in court, the judge is waiting for a decision or instruction from somewhere else. People are passing a decision based on that their hands are tied. We should be capable of preaching the spirit of national identity, not tribal or ethnic or whatsoever nepotic characters that have developed. Yes, we have a law came out on what we call again hate speech. But what has been of it? You find organizations now sponsoring a division of regions, that Northwest and Southwest should not come together. And so too, there are movements that do not want Nigeria to be part and parcel of Cameroon. Yes, when Muammar Gaddafi came, he talked of the United States of Africa. What are we doing within ourselves to be one? Some people don't want it because the country Cameroon will become a state under a federal or a union of Africa, and they will just be governors, and so who will be the president. You start finding egoistic greed tendencies playing in to slow down certain activities. Gabon is accusing Cameroonians of overtaking their jobs. In South Africa, Nigerians are being beaten every day. Within even ourselves, you find some people telling you that an Igbo man cannot be president and this one cannot be president. When in other nations, you just mentioned, the Prime Minister of UK is an Indian.
He's an Indian.
Barack Obama was African American.
Yes.
When people are based on meritocracy, not on mediocrity.
Yeah.
When you want to build a nation, Africa should grow within this. That Apostle Ambe is capable to be the Minister of Finance, not because he's an Anglophone. Where certain positions are reserved only for a particular group of persons. That is a gentleman agreement. It is my turn. You have heard that. Meaning we go for positions because it is my turn. I should be the next leader. Africa can never grow within such mindset. Africa needs people who have the nation at heart, not those who have political, individual tendencies within their mind. That is why you just came back. A small road we cannot build. Yes, Don DiMaggio made mention of Otto Road. 10 years after, Cameroonians are dying. I said somewhere that Otto Road was supposed to be called an emergent road.
Yes.
Emergency, as act of emergency. The number of people dying on Douala Yaoundé Highway, that road was supposed to be realized within 4 years. Because we are dying. And we know what that road will bring to the livelihood of both regions. So we must not always reason in the way of I should be the one to do it, so that I will even lick my own hands.
You say IMF should give us more money?
Yeah, I'm saying, Mr. Leo, we should prove
our
economy. Yes, IMF has to give us.
You said IMF has a problem.
And
you're going back to IMF.
That's why it's a
No,
why
should they supervise?
Yes, within us, Africans should learn to trade within themselves. Africa, what he just mentioned, some 2-3 months ago, the government of Cameroon stopped the sales of cocoa to Nigeria and encourages cocoa to come to Douala so that it goes through the port for foreign trade. Meaning we encourage foreign trade than trade among ourselves. Of course. If Nigeria is buying cocoa from Cameroon, I believe the simple outing is that a bag of cocoa is 500.
A better price.
A better rate, we know, for the enjoyment of farmers.
Yes.
Who is the last resort.
Yes.
Farmers enjoying what? Better treatment with Nigeria than even any foreigner you're giving the
That's
cocoa.
why they are selling them, because the price is high.
That is just all. So now within it, if we can't encourage trade among ourselves, how are we going to grow within? Yes, somebody said, we don't depend on African human resources. Experts come from abroad, they are giving 50,000 francs an hour. Then you call the same Cameroonian doing the same activity, you give him 25,000. Just imagine what happened with the head coaches of all football nations in Africa and even other denominations. When you call a Frenchman in the national team, you give him 70 million francs a month. You call a Cameroonian, 12 million is his salary. It becomes funny. Yes, even in public recruitments of contracts, like you just mentioned, road construction.
Okay.
An African country, a fellow brother presents the same offer, but we prefer a Chinese.
Doc, we are out of time. We are going to continue this discussion.
Yes, Mr. Liobert, surely, hopefully that there will be a second match. Because there's a lot we need to do.
No.
There's a lot of
we are going to run a series of this. Great. I'm sure the whole of next week we will focus on that. So many persons have written to me telling me that there is a lot we have to do, especially with respect to the continent that is Africa. Because sincerely, when you go out there and come back, there are...
He has said something very sensitive here, that this is a better platform to actually educate and enlighten Africans. Yeah. I'm telling you, we need to. There's much to enlighten our own people. They are ignorant.
Okay, thank you for coming, Doctor.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. Again, you see Africa. I said Africa is a destination. I've been proud that the next century we'll talk Africa and not Europe.
Hello?
Okay. Yeah, good evening.
Yes, I was just following the program and I wanted to participate there, but it's like the program is getting off.
Just go on. Send your contribution. We're listening.
Yeah, I'm calling from Rwanda.
Okay.
I am a full-blown Amazonian. Yes, because nobody...
Okay. Yeah, we are not talking about that here. We want to thank you, Apostle, for coming.
Yes, please, like I said earlier, let's endeavor to make sure that money does not circulate in the hands of individuals. Even toll gate, please. Those toll gates in Cameroon, money should be going to a central unit. That's what is done in most advanced countries. I know those who are collecting money at the toll gate, he won't be happy with me, but we want the good of Cameroon.
Yeah, but we also hope when the money gets to the central system, it should be put into good use. Thank you for coming.
So thanks so much. I just wish that
we
should grow our agroeconomy as well as industrial economy. Like Dr. Ako said, what benefit is it if we get cocoa and we cannot alter the process of our cocoa to enjoy it? We will still be another sham. So we should invest on education, health services. Africa needs that, and that the law in Africa should have no eye. Okay. Because one of the things that the law favors people. If he's a minister, he breaks the law. If it is, he goes. If he's a business tycoon, it doesn't apply to him. So I think that when we put this at a level playing ground, we are going to emerge.
We want to thank you all for watching, and especially to you, Desmond and Eli, for production, Tabit and Brian for supervision. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.